Greetings, y'all. Welcome back to the garden. It's now mid-March and we are in full-blown spring mode. We've been getting our first nice few rains of the season and the plants are loving it. They're flushing out green and already starting to grow by leaps and bounds. So I figured now would be a nice time to do a little bit of up-potting of our little baby seedlings, as well as a little bit of dividing and transplanting of some bigger, more mature plants. We've got some fun stuff. We've got a zillion little tomato seedlings to do, a bunch of little aloe pups. We've got a raspberry plant, a guava plant, and a sort of semi-tropical monstera plant, which is kind of fun. Might be a little bit something unusual for folks out there. So come on, we'll take a tour of the yard and we'll get an update and we'll show you how we're going to go about our transplanting, dividing, and potting up. Let's go. Here's just a little tour of the yard. Here's a little update on the tater patch you might have seen in one of my older videos. These are now about two and a half weeks old, and as you can see, the taters are just going crazy. I got basically all of them to sprout but one. I had 6 on this side, 6 on that side, and the only one that really hasn't done anything is this one, but all the rest are growing at least a little bit, and soon it will be time to kind of start mounding up around the stem, but I'm going to let them go a little bit longer. But as you can see, they're doing really well and they're starting to grow like gangbusters since we've been getting our nice warm spring rains. So I'm real excited about the tater patch. I've got my mulch mountain ready to go. And if we come over here, we can also see some of these sort of semi-tropical canna lilies starting to break the surface as well. So that's a great sign. And of course, we've got our hydrangeas that are loving all of this nice warm rain as well. As we come around and leave this little foyer here, you can see the wisteria has come to life as well. It was basically a bare stick a week ago, and now it's leafed out. It's growing these beautiful grape cluster shaped flowers. They do have a mild fragrance to them, but the bees love them, and eventually this will form a giant trellis sort of plant tunnel as the summer goes on, and it's beautiful and really kind of helps keep the temperature down as well. And as we go out into the front here, you'll be able to see just how green everything has become with a little bit of real rain. The banana tree is putting out some nice big leaves. Again, this hydrangea is really coming to life, and even the lawn is coming back, so I'm going to have to start mowing that joker soon. So as you can see, we're off to a good start. Everything's turning green, everything's coming back to life. So now's a good time to get all of our little plants into some bigger pots or into their permanent homes so that they can really just hit the ground running and give them the best chance we possibly can. So come along with me, we'll do some potting up, some transplanting, and a few little pro tips as well along the way. And here's that stack of 100 4-inch pots that I found off of Amazon. So I think what I'm going to do is lay them out in groups of 20. We'll pre-fill them with our potting mix, and then we'll go by and put a seedling in each cup and kind of do an assembly line fashion. That way we can be as efficient as possible. But it's amazing how they can squeeze 100 cups into something basically the size of my hand. And they were quite affordable off of Amazon. I think it was about maybe $10 or $15 for 100 4-inch pots. They're a little flimsy, but that's fine. They'll last for the season and for everything I need. So we'll get these guys laid out. We'll fill them with our potting mix and we'll start putting some seedlings in. There you go. Here's the potting mix I'm going to be using. It's essentially like a triple ground pine bark mulch that I got from my local nursery. It's fairly common down here in the deep south. I'm not sure if you can get it in other places. This is just called like a nursery pro mix or just a nursery mix or a potting mix. It doesn't really have a proper name, but it is just a very finely ground pine bark mulch. It doesn't have necessarily a whole lot of nutrients in it in and of itself, but it's great at holding moisture and also letting it drain. So it never really lets your plants get overwatered or root rot or any of that sort of thing. And it is also slightly acidic, which most plants tend to like. So it's really good stuff, and it stays nice and fluffy no matter how much water you put on it. And I was able to get a pickup truck full for about $40. So that's what you could pay for 2 or 3 bags of regular fancy potting soil. So this should get us very far, and I've got lots more if I need it, but this will get us going on our first batch of, say, 80 to 100 little transplants. Alrighty, y'all. You can see we've got our batch of 20 little 4-inch pots ready to go. They've been pre-filled with our triple ground pine bark medium, and we've got a nice batch of little tomato seedlings that are ready to go. So I'll gently tease these apart from the potting soil that they were first grown in, and I'll put one seedling in each pot, and then we'll go back and bury each seedling down as deep as we can. Tomatoes actually like to be buried a little more deeply than they're first grown as a seedling, and they'll shoot out lots of little extra roots. And we should be able to get a nice sized little tomato plant in each of these pots. It probably gets to be 6 or 8 inches tall before we need to transplant it again. And this will give us, kind of buy us some time and buy us some space. So now we've got to take all of these and put them in here. Alrighty. Here's some of those seedlings that just came out of that pot. You can see they were only growing in about 2 inches of soil that I used to germinate the seeds in. And now we can take these guys that are a couple inches long each, maybe 3 or 4 inches long each, and we'll just very gently, with one hand here, try to tease apart the roots. Just gently pull on them, they'll come apart. And then sure enough, we can see we've got one main one, got this little guy we'll get rid of here, and a decent little root ball. So we'll take it over here to our potting mix, and tomatoes like to be buried deeply. They'll actually kick out roots all up and down their stem. You might even be able to see these little fuzzy little hairs, and those will actually all become roots in time. So we're going to take this, push it down as deeply as we can into our potting mix here with one hand. Give it a little shake, and voila. Got a nice happy little tomato plant there. And it's now a couple inches deeper than it was when it started, so it'll be able to grow a few extra roots, and this plant will probably double and triple in size before we need to transplant it again. But by then it'll have a nice large root ball on it, and when we put it in the ground it'll just take off and really have a nice healthy jump start on things. So we'll now just take the rest of these, again, slowly break them up gently, and we'll just put one in each pot. Bury it down as deeply as we can, water them in thoroughly, and we'll have our first little batch of 20. And we've also got some aloe plants that we've got to pot up as well. Some of these are nice large individual specimens. Others have lots and lots of little pups that are inside that are ready to be divided, split up, and put into their own pots. And you'll be amazed how many little babies these guys will put out in a season. So again, we should be able to probably triple the number of aloe plants we've got here. See if we can get a batch of 20 out of them as well. Alrighty, y'all. Here's one of those aloe plants I wanted to subdivide. See if I can do this one-handed here. As I take it out of the pot, you can see that it's starting to get pretty root bound, and it's just not hitting the bottom. You can also see that this one plant is actually made up of several smaller plants. They'll kick out little, pups, sort of like an elephant ear or a banana tree will. And so now the trick is to just very delicately sort of tease these apart. One trick is to just sort of bounce it up and down in your hand like this, and the soil will sort of naturally fall apart, and gravity will kind of do the work for you here. That way you're not really actively ripping or tearing anything. And sure enough, you can see we've got one large plant, a little baby pup coming off of it, which we can kind of pluck. We'll put that here. And we've got a medium one, another medium one, and a third medium one. So you can see out of this one little pot here, right, little 4-inch pot, we have sort of one parent plant, 3 sort of adolescent plants, and then one brand new pup. So from one, we get 4. So we'll now end up with 5 new plants. We've got tons of little aloe pots to fill and tons more aloe plants to divide. So we should end up with quite a few by the time everything is said and done. Here's a great shot of just how many pups and offshoots you can get from just a few plants. You can see I only broke up maybe 5 plants that were in 4-inch pots each. And I've already got all of these babies. Some are quite large, some are kind of medium, and we've got lots of little ones. So again, we'll put them in our little 4-inch pots, put them in there with our triple ground pine bark mulch growing medium, and we'll get them all potted up again. And as you can see, we've still got quite a few more to go. So we'll have lots and lots of aloe by the time it's all said and done. Alrighty, y'all. As you can see, there's 100 little 4-inch pots done. Doesn't seem like it could take up such little space, but that's 100. I counted them twice just to be sure. But as you can see, still got plenty of soil to go, and I've still got plenty of lettuce to transplant, and of course even more tomatoes. So we've still got lots more to go, but I'm gonna have to get some more pots before I can do that. But I have plenty of other supplies. But it's amazing how this one pot here, which was full of seedlings, turned into essentially, about 60 or 70 tomato seedlings, and how a small batch of these aloe plants, probably only even half of them, turned into several dozen little aloe plants over here of various sizes. And I also had a jade plant that I decided to kind of split up into a few of these extra pots as well. So that'll be fun. We've got a little bit of everything going now, but I need to go order some more pots, and we'll do round 2, finish up these aloe and the tomatoes and the lettuces. And then eventually we'll get on to transplanting these strawberries, kale, and chard. Looking good for now. Hey y'all, there's a little dwarf ever-bearing mulberry plant I just transplanted as well. Just using the same methodology. I cleared out a space in the mulch, dug down a few inches into the soil, put the plant in, making sure that the crown was nice and high, sort of at the peak of our little volcano with the plant coming out the top. I just put a handful of slow release organic fertilizer on there, and watered it in, and then just put a little bit of mulch back around it, just to cover up the raw dirt. And you can see it's already got some new fresh growth starting to pop out the top. So it's just now starting to wake up. So rather than wait another week, I figured now would be a good time to get it in the ground. I don't expect it to necessarily do a whole lot this year, but if it can put down some good roots and get to a good, decent size, that would be great. Right now I've got it anchoring sort of this little quadrant-shaped mulch bed. And you can see it's more or less in the center and getting good light. So I think that'll be a good spot, and we can still have plenty of room to fill in lots of fun stuff around it as well. Okay. Here's that baby monstera plant I was telling you about. I wasn't sure if it was going to make it through the winter, but as you can see, it's just now starting to wake up again after we got that nice spring rain. But it's in a bit of a kind of an awkward spot here where it's eventually just going to get overshadowed by this giant banana tree and these giant elephant ears, which you can see starting to come in up here. So I think I'd rather move it somewhere where it can be seen a little better and it has more room to grow. So I'm going to move it to another area of the yard, and I've got several other ones of these as well, so it's not like this is the only one I have. And I'll show you what they look like. They're kind of a cool, funky rhizome that looks almost like a little caterpillar that will then continue to grow and grow and grow, and they can eventually form almost like small sort of tree-like structures as these giant dark waxy leaves come out and have sort of an elongated finger sort of a pattern. I'll try to insert some pictures if I can find some. So we'll get this guy dug up, prep our bed on the other side of the yard, transfer him to a little bit better spot where it gets a little more sun, has more room to grow, and also we'll be able to just see it and appreciate it a little better. Got that little monstera rhizome dug up, and as you can see, we've got one new leaf starting to come out and a few of the old ones from last year. And as you can see, it's got this very interesting sort of stem to it. Looks almost kind of like a little caterpillar, but you can see where all the various eyes are, almost like on a potato. And it's similar to the way an elephant ear or bananas grow as well, these sort of tropical rhizomes that like to be sort of half buried and then shoot up lots of little runners. You can see it's got a few old roots from the initial cutting that I took this from, and it eventually created a new sprout off the side, off of one of those eyes we were talking about, and has now sent up a new little plant with some new little runners and some new roots. So we'll now put this into our mulch bed down here. I'm really not even going to bury it very deeply into the soil. I'm only going to bury just enough to put those roots underneath the soil and then push the mulch up around it. So it'll be sort of half buried, half exposed. The mulch is quite moist, as you can see, and it's getting very warm this time of year as well, here in the first couple weeks of March. So I'm not worried about it having poor conditions to grow in. In fact, it'll be just right. These very delicate roots like to grow almost, semi-exposed, only an inch or two below the soil. So we're going to do that here, put this guy down in our hole, as you can see here. We'll take some of the soil we dug out, bury it around, leaving it about 3/4 buried in the soil, with about 1/4 of it exposed, and we'll bury these smaller roots with the leftover soil and the mulch as well. And you'll see within about 2 weeks, this guy will just go crazy. Alrighty, y'all, here's that monstera all finished up. As you can see, we got it planted just at the right height where the collar is just flush with the mulch and pushed up next to it, but not piled up above it in any way. And you can see we've got two new leaves coming out. So this little guy should be off to a great start. I'll keep you updated on him. I'll keep him watered well for the first couple weeks, and after that it should be good to go on its own. And it will start to fill in this understory here real nicely. As the banana tree gets nice and tall, this monstera will kind of take in the understory. And between these three plants, they'll soak up all that water coming off of the gutters quite nicely. It's been about 2 or 3 days, and we've got a nice rain in between. And as you can see, this little guy is just taken off. Those little curled leaves that we had before have now completely opened. That secondary leaf is now starting to really become visible. As you can see, it's nice and bright and green and healthy and happy. So this little guy should be off to the races and looking good, and you'll be amazed at how fast it grows. Pretty much every week it'll start to put out a new leaf, especially once we hit the warm, rainy season. So far so good. Looking good on our little monstera transplant, and like I said, it's real easy peasy. Here's a raspberry bush that I got as a bare root specimen, and we just had in a pot over winter. And now that things are finally starting to warm up, I want to go ahead and get him in the ground as well. So hopefully he'll just wake up in his new home and be none the wiser. I can already see Mr. Worm hanging out down there, so I think that's a good sign that we've got some good dirt. We'll just do our normal method. We'll put clear away our mulch, soften up our soil a little bit, transplant our new plants such that our collar is nice and high and dry, and then we'll just kind of fill our mulch back in after we've put a little handful of slow release organic fertilizer on there. So I'll go ahead and get this guy in the hole with Mr. Worm, get him top dressed, watered in real thoroughly, and then put the mulch back. Alrighty, and here's one last transplant. This is just a little baby guava plant, but you can see it's also starting to come back out of its dormancy. It's got some nice new fresh growth after that nice warm spring rain we just had. So I've got the hole prepped, same thing, we'll get them in there. Make sure that the crown is nice and high, give it a little organic fertilizer, fill in the hole, and put our mulch back after we've watered it in. Alrighty, thank you for joining me, y'all. I hope it was useful and you learned a little something. I tried to show 3 different ways to transplant 3 different types of plants, sort of deep, regular, and shallow, as well as encouraging you to kind of work with what you already have. You'd be surprised how many plants you can get out of stuff you already have if you just take the time to divide them properly and pot them up. Oftentimes one plant can become many, many more. And now's the time to do it here in this early springtime. That way they can all wake up in their new home and be happy, happy, happy. So thank you again for joining me, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.